Family gatherings are rarely as picture perfect as the decorations. That night, our home was dressed like something off a holiday card. Christmas lights still clung to the edges of the roof, flickering lazily as if they knew their time was almost up. Inside, the house pulsed with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Kids darted around the furniture like little tornadoes of sugar and mischief. I had just finished refilling the snack trays and wiping down the kitchen island for what felt like the third time in an hour. My feet ached, my head buzzed. I smiled anyway. That's what you do. You keep things moving. You make it look effortless, even when it isn't. I'd hosted the year-end party for 7 years running, and every time I told myself it'd be different. This time they'd notice the work, the details, the heart I poured into it. This time they'd see me. But something felt off that evening. It wasn't the usual holiday chaos. It was quieter, under the surface, like a ripple in a glass of water that hadn't been touched. I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen and watched them laugh, my husband's family. My in-laws clustered together like a hive, sharing private jokes and stories I hadn't been part of. I brought over a fresh bowl of guacamole, and one of them barely looked up before muttering, "You always overdo it, you know?" That stung more than I let on. I glanced at Mark, my husband, half hoping he'd catch it, maybe say something, but he was nursing a beer, scrolling on his phone, physically present and emotionally nowhere. It felt like I was the only one not in on the joke. I moved through the rooms, with that ache you only get when you're surrounded by people who claim to love you but don't really see you. I laughed when expected, smiled on cue, made sure everyone had what they needed. That's the role, right? Until I realized I hadn't seen Sierra in a while. 5 years old, usually glued to my side at parties like these. She wasn't in the living room, not in the kitchen. I walked past the guest bath. Empty. Her pink socks weren't curled up by the couch. My heart pricked. She's probably playing with the other kids. Chill out, someone chuckled when I asked. Another waved a hand. Oh, she was here a minute ago. But something inside me said no, this isn't right. Sierra was gentle. She didn't like loud noises or roughhousing. She liked painting, making paper snowflakes. And she always told me before she disappeared into another room. I walked faster, checked upstairs. Each room, my voice getting quieter, then sharper. Sierra! I opened the door to the guest bedroom and froze. She was there, sitting on the edge of the bed, her little legs swinging back and forth. Her hands were folded in her lap, and her hair, her long, soft curls, were gone, completely gone, shaved. A few other kids stood nearby, wide-eyed, not saying a word. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you're dreaming, like the world's tilted just a bit too far and you're about to fall. "Kiera," I whispered. She looked at me. She didn't cry, she didn't speak, but her eyes, those big brown eyes, looked empty, like someone had scooped her soul out and left the shell. My knees nearly gave out. I moved toward her, barely breathing, ran my fingers over her head, my own hand trembling. She flinched, not much, but enough. Then came the voice behind me, cold, mocking. "You're welcome," Trina said, leaning on the doorframe like she was posing for a photograph. My husband's sister, the one who always knew how to say the right-wrong thing. "What did you do?" My voice cracked, sharp, louder than I meant. "Relax, it's just a little makeover. She said she wanted to be like 11 from Stranger Things." She chuckled like she was doing me a favor. I blinked. "You shaved her head without asking me?" She was fine with it. "Don't be so dramatic." The room swirled. I looked around. People had followed the noise. Some stood by the hallway, half in, half out. No one said anything. Mark was there too, just standing, frozen. "You had no right," I hissed, my voice breaking now. "She's just hair. It'll grow back," Trina scoffed. "She's a child. She's my child," I shouted, finally letting the fury come. Trina rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go again, always the victim. No one moved, no one spoke. It was like they were all watching a movie. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a prank. It wasn't some silly misunderstanding. This was a message, a line drawn in the sand. Trina had never liked me. Too quiet, too careful, too not like them. Over the years, she'd found ways to cut me down, backhanded compliments, whispered jokes, social digs that no one else seemed to notice. But this was different. This was her stepping over the line, dragging my daughter with her. I looked at Mark again, praying for him to do something, anything. But he just stood there, beer still in hand. In that moment, I thought, I realized I was the only one fighting for my daughter. I knelt beside Sierra, pulled her gently into my arms. She leaned in, finally, her little body melting into mine. I didn't cry, not then. I didn't scream. I just held her and made a decision. That was the night I stopped being the quiet one. I carried Sierra out of the guest bedroom like she was made of glass. My arms felt like they were holding the weight of every wrong choice I'd ever made. Her head rested on my shoulder, bare and vulnerable, and I could feel the coolness of her scalp through my sweater. My legs were steady, but inside me everything was trembling. Fingertips tingling, mouth dry, breath coming in short, quiet bursts. Behind us, the house was already returning to its regular hum. Music played, a bottle popped open somewhere, and laughter bubbled up like nothing had happened. That made it worse. The world had cracked and they just stepped over the pieces. I didn't scream, I didn't break anything. I held her tighter and walked down the hall toward the bathroom. "Mommy," she whispered into my ear, voice almost too soft to catch. "Am I ugly now?" Something in me shattered, but I didn't let it show. I just squeezed her tighter. Elie Wiesel once said, "The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference." And in that moment, surrounded by family who'd watched this happen and said nothing, I knew exactly what he meant. In the bathroom, the light was harsh, cold. I set her down gently on the counter and reached for a washcloth. She didn't speak, just looked around with that empty stare. Children only get when something's been stolen from them, and they're too young to know what it was. She caught sight of the mirror and froze. Her hand rose slowly, fingers brushing against her scalp like she was trying to wake herself from a nightmare. I saw her shoulders start to shake, but no sound came out. No crying, no wailing, just silence. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. I wiped her face with a damp cloth gently. I wanted to scream, to curse the people outside that door, but I focused on her. That's what she needed. When we stepped back into the living room, the atmosphere had shifted. The adults had drinks in hand, the music had gone up a notch, and Trina was holding court near the fireplace, as if she'd been waiting for us. "There she is," she called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Guess she's going for the monk look now." A few people laughed, nervous, hesitant, the kind of laugh you give when you're not sure if something's funny but you're too cowardly to say it isn't. I stood still. Sierra's hand found mine again, small and trembling. Trina grinned like she'd just told a clever joke at a dinner party. My face stayed calm, but inside I could feel the heat rising like steam under a sealed lid. Mark appeared beside me, finally, his voice low. "Don't make a scene." That did it. Not the haircut, not the laughter, not Trina. Those 4 words like I was the problem. I didn't say anything, I didn't cry, I just nodded slowly, my eyes never leaving Trina's face. Around the room, people went back to their drinks, their phones, their conversations. No one asked if Sierra was okay. No one asked if I was. I started taking mental snapshots of it all. Who laughed? Who looked away? Who stayed silent? That was the beginning. From the corner of my eye, I saw a teenage cousin pointing a phone at us, then quickly tucking it away. Not long after, I caught a glimpse of a message being typed, something about bald baby 11 and a few laughing emojis. Another screen lit up with the words, "This is insane." It was out there now, not just in this room. They'd turned her pain into content. They thought this was entertainment, but it was my child's soul on display. I remembered something my father once told me. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. He was never a man of many words, but when he spoke, he meant it, and he was right. I looked around the room again, Mark standing like a ghost beside me, Trina basking in her attention, everyone else pretending nothing had happened. If I stayed quiet now, I'd be teaching them that this was okay, that my daughter's pain was acceptable, that I could be mocked, and she could be mocked, and we'd take it with a smile and a casserole. Not anymore. I kneeled down in front of Sierra. Her eyes met mine, unsure, scared. You okay, baby? I asked. She nodded, barely. We're gonna be okay, I said quietly, steady this time. But this isn't over. There was something new in my voice, steel, not tears. She didn't smile, but her shoulders relaxed just a little. I stood up, pulled out my phone. While the party raged on, I stepped away to a quiet corner and started taking pictures. Sierra's shaved head from different angles, the guest room, the clipper on the dresser, Trina's smug face mid-laugh, every image, every detail documented. My heart was pounding, but my hands, steady as stone. This time, I wouldn't let them rewrite the story. I carried her upstairs and tucked Sierra into bed, watching her drift off like she was holding onto a thread too thin to feel safe. The house grew quiet. I stepped out into the garage and leaned my back against the cold metal of the washer, just to feel something solid beneath me. Silence surrounded me. The party lights dimmed in the distance. I shut the garage door behind me and the hum of music turned distant, swallowed by night. In that stillness, memories rose unbidden. I closed my eyes. A flash from when I was 14. Trina in the backyard at my birthday party, tearing apart my new dress, laughing loud enough so the neighbors could hear. I remember standing there frozen, feeling something inside me crack. History doesn't repeat itself. It rots from the roots, I thought, because it had started back then and it never stopped. A whisper of laughter drifted from inside. My niece, unaware of my presence, made a crack over the phone. Yeah, Mum said she'd finally shut that princess up, I heard. My chest lurched. She talked about Trina getting clippers a week ago. The pieces clicked, cold and precise. This wasn't a prank at all, it was a statement. I swallowed back the rage, the betrayal. Their scheme involved more than just impulse. They planned this. I stepped back inside and found Uncle Mitch waiting in a corner. He looked older tonight. He said quietly, I saw what happened. His voice shook. He didn't stand with me, just admonished me to keep the peace. Trina's like her mother, mean, sure, but harmless. My heart stung. He knew for years and said nothing. I stared at him, the shock in my throat. They'd protected her with silence. They'd excused her cruelty for years in the name of family unity. But whatever they called it, it was cowardice. My mother's words came back. Don't make waves, don't air dirty laundry. So I hadn't. I'd stayed quiet too long. When I was younger, I'd patched their hurts, swallowed mine, for peace, for appearances, for whatever they asked me to sacrifice. But tonight I felt it. This legacy of silence threatening the next generation. I would not let it infect Sierra. I walked into the guest room. The nightlight cast shadows across the walls. I looked in the mirror, saw her reflection, my face tight, eyes tired but unbroken. From the back cover of my old journal, I remembered the line, "They don't get to decide how the story ends." I touched the glass, steady. In my mind, I began typing a message. Not to Trina, not to Mark, but to a therapist friend. I'm ready to tell it right. I drew up an email in my memory, dates, witnesses, attachments, images. I'd gather the proof, present the case, not with noise or vindictiveness, but with clarity. Just then, a soft voice came from the hallway. You really think people will believe you over her? I froze. The wine glass in Trina's hand caught the lamplight. She stood, there, leaning into the doorway, eyes sharp. I turned slowly, looked straight at her. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her, but I finally saw her for what she was. We walked back into the living room, Sierra's small hand locked inside mine. The party was still rolling, music low, the smell of spiked cider in the air, voices floating like smoke. But something shifted when we entered. Conversations paused, heads tilted just slightly, eyes darting like they'd been caught watching something they shouldn't. Then I saw Trina. She was across the room, remote in hand. A smirk that didn't belong in a family gathering curled across her face. Behind her, a portable projector was already aimed at the blank wall. She didn't need to say anything. My gut tightened before the screen even lit up. Then I heard it. A whisper from someone near the couch. "Watch this." The room dimmed. What came next played out in slow motion, though I knew someone had edited it that way. A video of the shaving. Sierra's face confused, then still. Trina's laughter played louder than it had been in real time. The camera zoomed in on my daughter's eyes. Then back to the clippers. The moment the last lock of hair fell was slowed down like it was cinematic gold. There were gasps. Some guests laughed awkwardly. Others pulled out their phones. Sierra's fingers crushed mine. I looked down. Her eyes were wide, not blinking, not crying. Trina's voice rang out, sarcastic and sweet. "Let's all take a moment to appreciate her new look, shall we?" I tried to speak. My lips moved, but my throat cracked halfway through. My voice failed me. The words I needed weren't there. I turned my eyes to the people around us. Some looked ashamed. Most didn't. One woman even filmed the screen like it was a concert moment. A guy in the back chuckled and muttered, "Damn, that's brutal." And then it hit me. This wasn't humiliation. Not for Trina, not for them. This was entertainment. The video ended, the lights stayed low. Trina dropped the remote onto the coffee table like she'd just performed a magic trick. My husband mumbled, barely audible, "Trina, come on, enough." But it was nothing, no spine behind it. Some people trickled out of the room. Others stayed planted, unsure whether to follow shame or curiosity. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just looked around the room, searching who would step forward, who would say this was wrong. No one. The next morning, the damage spread like wildfire. It started with one mother at the school carpool line asking too loudly, "So, why'd she shave her daughter's head like that?" Kids overheard. One little boy asked Sierra in the hallway, "Are you sick or just weird?" Ms. Bennett, her teacher, pulled me aside in the parking lot. A parent showed me something on their phone. "I think we need to talk." I hadn't seen the posts yet. When I got home, I opened my phone. There they were, screenshots, reposts, TikToks, hashtags. Sierra's face frozen in slow motion, laughter in the background, a voiceover joking, "When Aunt Trina's had too many mimosas." Texts started flooding in. "Is this your kid?" "OMG, I'm so sorry, this is awful." "Are you okay? That poor child." It was no longer a family mistake, it was content, for strangers. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the phone light up again and again. My first instinct was to scream. My second was to throw the phone. Instead, I stared. Then I remembered something I read once. You can't control what they share, only how you respond. I took a deep breath. This wouldn't be a fight over who shouted louder. It would be strategy. Planning, measured, focused. That night, I drafted a message to the local PTA board. I searched contacts for a media friend who worked local news. I jotted notes, dates, names, details, images. Every move now would be deliberate, because silence didn't mean surrender anymore. It meant a war prep. My phone buzzed again. The caller ID lit up. Principal's office. I answered, keeping my voice even. "Hello?" The principal's voice came through, calm but loaded. "We need to talk about what's being said among parents." The house was still. Sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds like it was afraid to be there. I sat up in bed, stiff from a night of sleep that never really happened. The party had ended, the cars were gone, the trash bags half full in the kitchen told the story. But the air felt heavier than before, heavier than noise. That's what shame does. It doesn't echo, it lingers. Sierra lay curled on her side, her head wrapped in a pink bandana. She looked peaceful, like nothing ever happened. But I knew better. That kind of stillness only comes from exhaustion, not peace. There's a difference between moving on and letting it slide, I said to no one, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. I've done enough sliding. The floor creaked under my feet. I didn't flinch. I didn't have room for fear anymore. The kitchen clock ticked louder than it should have. Then she walked in, Trina. Casual as ever, like she didn't light a match and walk away. Hair brushed, pajamas ironed, coffee already made in her hand. She scrolled through her phone like nothing had burned. I didn't speak. She did. Everyone said she looked brave. She said it without looking up, like it was a compliment, like Sierra had chosen to be humiliated. I took a breath, not deep, controlled, then clear as glass. She didn't ask for courage, you forced it on her. She smirked, a twitch at the edge of her mouth. She wanted me angry, but there was a flicker in her eye, like a dog that suddenly realizes you're not backing up anymore. I walked over to the table and laid down a manila folder. She didn't touch it. Inside were photos, time-stamped, screenshots, video stills. I'd labeled them, organized. I know what you did, I said, steady as I'd ever spoken. And I'm done pretending I don't. She finally looked up. Her face hardened. It's family stuff. Nobody really cares. I leaned forward. Maybe they didn't before, but they will now. That landed. I told her she wouldn't be seeing Sierra again, that I'd be talking to a lawyer, that this wasn't going away. She stood there for a second too long, just long enough to reveal what I needed to see. Fear. Trina didn't leave with a scream. She didn't throw a tantrum. She just picked up her phone and walked out of the kitchen, fast, like the walls had suddenly gotten smaller. I stood there, staring at the chair she left empty. I thought back to the first time I'd been told to just let it go. I was 16. Trina knocked over my science project and blamed the dog. My mum said, "Don't air dirty laundry. It's not worth it." That was code, not for peace, but for silence. Protection, not for me, but for the person doing harm. Peace kept by silence is not peace, it's surrender. I wouldn't pass that legacy to my daughter. My husband walked in, rubbing his eyes. Do we really need to go this far? He looked like he hadn't slept either, but I didn't soften. Not now. Your silence helped her, I said. I won't let it help anymore. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I was caught in the middle. There is no middle, I said, not when a child is hurt. He didn't respond. He left the room. I didn't chase him. I didn't expect support anymore. I expected movement from me. I opened my laptop, pulled up the email draft I'd worked on before. I attached the folder. I labeled it Incident Evidence, and I clicked Send. Right then, a new text came in. Unknown number, 4 words. You don't know who you're messing with. I arrived early at the school fundraiser, holding Sierra's hand tight. Folding chairs lined the hallways, tables halved under plates of cupcakes, homemade signs pinned to brick walls. The noise of children and chatter felt like a steady storm, but I forced myself to walk in because I refused to hide her now. Courage isn't loud, I whispered. Sometimes it's just showing up. When Sierra tugged my sleeve to show me a drawing she'd made, I smiled through the tremor in my heart. This was for her. Later during the raffle, Trina grabbed the mic mid-announcement. Her voice rang loud and smooth as though she had rehearsed her lines. I want to take a moment to thank my family, she began, her tone saccharine. Then she dropped the knife. Some women hide behind therapy and motherhood while destroying everything from within. Gasps filled pockets of the crowd. I felt my pulse thump in my ears, but I forced myself to sit still, shoulders straight. Trina ended with a smile. Everyone has their own version of the truth. Afterwards, whispers trailed me. Faces I once saw every Sunday turned away. A friend texted, "What's going on between you two? That was intense." I felt a sharp betrayal, my stand now twisted in public. Mark found me by the snack table, his voice flat. "You said you'd keep it private." I clenched my jaw. I didn't start this, but I couldn't be quiet either. On the way home, I pulled into the car and let the dam break. I cried, real ragged tears that tasted like every lie I'd swallowed. I remembered being told, "Never let them see you break." That lie had kept me silent too long. I whispered into the darkness, "This is how they silence you, humiliate you into submission." Back home, I didn't lash out. I chose a different response. I posted one line on social media. "When you stop enabling abusers, they start performing." Reactions came fast, some supportive, some skeptical, some harsh. Then a direct message from a woman in town. "I've been there too." My heart jumped. I was not alone. That night, when the mailbox clinked closed, I grabbed the envelope. Inside was a cease and desist notice with Trina's name on it. The accusation, slander. Under it, a text, "Game on." I held it up, steady, and let the threat settle around me. I didn't flinch. The house was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. Party banners drooped, paper plates abandoned on end tables, and the air held a faint sweetness from spilled soda. I walked back into the living room and felt the weight of everything that had already happened pressing into the walls. It wasn't over, it was only changing shape. In the doorway stood Claude, half in shadow, watching me. When they leave their shadows behind, their secrets do too, I thought. I didn't speak. I just sat on the edge of the sofa, palms flat on my knees, waiting. Sometimes silence draws truth out faster than words. Claude stepped forward like a man confessing a crime he'd been carrying too long. "I never told because I was scared of her wrath," he said, his eyes fixed on the floor. "You need to know what shaped her." Then he told it, the image so vivid I could almost see it. Trina as a child, her mother standing over her with clippers, neighbours peeking through curtains, the sound of hair hitting the floor. She cried but made no sound, trying to be invisible. "That's how she learned power," Claude whispered. "That's how she learned humiliation." Each word landed heavy in the room, and I realized this cruelty hadn't been born last month or last year. It had been rehearsed for decades. I called my mother into the room. Sybil came in slow, her hands trembling slightly. She sat across from me, and for a moment we were 3 generations in one dim room, all holding fragments of a story we hadn't dared name. Her voice cracked. "I cut your hair once, remember?" she said. "I was angry. I wanted to make you disappear." I remembered the scissors, the way the mirror felt like an accusation. The parallel slammed into me, my daughter now bearing a pain that had lived like a parasite in our family. Grief and fury knotted together. "This ends now," I said, my voice a low vow. Trina's footsteps broke the spell. She burst in, eyes darting, hearing enough to know the walls were closing in. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, but her face betrayed her, guilt, fear, and something else, almost like a plea. "You inherited pain," I told her evenly, "but you turned it into a weapon." She hissed back, "You've always played the victim." Around us the family fractured. Some stood behind me, others looked away. Mother against daughter, sister against sister. The cracks were visible now. I stood, no longer shrinking. "This narrative stops here, no more rewriting." My voice filled the room. I named what Trina had done, layered it with Claude's confession, with Sybil's story. Guests shifted, pale, eyes flicking between us. Mark stood silent, the tension clinging to him like a second skin. But the truth was out. It floated in the air like dust motes in the lamplight, making cruelty harder to hide. Now everyone sees, I said, calm as a blade. Let's see what you'll do next. Then the phone rang, sharp and cold in the heavy silence. Unknown number. I picked it up without taking my eyes off Trina. Yes? I said. The voice on the other end was low, icy. You think you exposed me? I'm just getting started. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of paper and lemon polish, a clean place for dirty stories. I sat across from her, my fingers wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea I hadn't touched. She was sharp, not the type to offer sympathy, but the type to hand you a map out of a minefield. She slid the cease and desist across the desk like a loaded gun. They're baiting you, she said. If you retaliate wrong, they'll twist it and make you the villain. I stared at the legal language, paragraphs built like walls. I wanted to fight. I also wanted to make sure the fight didn't swallow me whole. She told me Trina was already spinning a narrative online, casting herself as the wounded one. You have to choose, she warned, escalate in court or strike with truth. Her words hung in the air like a dare. Later at home, I found Sierra curled on the couch, tablet in her lap, face pale in the glow of the screen. What are you watching, honey? I asked, already sensing the answer. She turned the screen toward me. It was from the year-end party. The moment Trina leaned down, mocking her, that smirk caught full and clear. My chest went cold. This was no hearsay, this was proof. I didn't show you because I thought I did something bad, Sierra whispered. I took the tablet, my hands shaking but steady enough to tap save. You did nothing wrong, I told her, pulling her close. You did the brave thing. Pain, pride, and urgency tangled in my chest. This wasn't just evidence, it was a chance to stop the bleeding. I sent the clip to my attorney without another word. That afternoon, a knock at the door. Martha, my mother-in-law, stood there, a woman who had always kept her distance, but her eyes were wet. She stepped inside without waiting. I saw the posts, she said. I saw the clip from Sierra. She sat at the kitchen table like a woman ready to confess. I've let her bully everyone, including me, no more. Then she told me what she'd seen for years, Trina's patterns from adolescence, the small cruelties that became big ones. Your strength made me ashamed of my silence, she said quietly. If you need me to testify, I will. For a moment, something shifted. An old wall cracked and an ally stepped through. That night, I sent Trina a final message. No threats, no performance, just a promise. This ends now. You can come clean or I will. Minutes later came her reply. Go ahead, we'll see who they believe. I opened my laptop, uploaded the clip publicly with almost no caption. The truth doesn't need an essay. Within an hour, notifications exploded. Shock, empathy, outrage. Strangers posted support. Old family contacts sent private messages of regret, some apologizing for their silence. For the first time, the tide felt like it might be shifting. I sat back at the kitchen table, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Mark still kept his distance, but I saw doubt creeping into his eyes. Claude texted me, "Thank you, you saved more than your daughter." I opened my journal and wrote, "Truth doesn't roar, it echoes." My shoulders felt lighter, but my gut stayed tight. Retaliation always comes when a mask is torn away. I wasn't naive, I was ready. Then my phone pinged, a new trending thread. Title, Mother Exploits Daughter for Sympathy. My thumb hovered over the screen. Trina had flipped the script, accusing me of manipulating my own child. The kitchen seemed to shrink around me. The hum of the fridge turned to a low drone. I stared at the screen, cold and still. The morning light streamed through the kitchen window like it hadn't in months. For the first time, the house felt quiet. Not tense, not waiting for the next blow, just quiet. I poured coffee into a chipped mug and sat at the table scrolling through messages. Hundreds of them. People I didn't know, some who'd been following the story since the first video leaked, others who had stumbled onto the truth and stayed. One message stood out. "We believe you. You stood tall for your child." I stared at it for a long moment. It felt less like validation and more like a mirror. My grandmother's words drifted back, steady as always. "Don't fight for people's approval. Fight for your own truth." I'd fought hard enough. Now I just wanted to stand still, to feel myself without the noise. Claude arrived just after 8 without knocking. He didn't have Trina with him. He asked to speak privately, his voice lower, like a man about to lay something down. We sat in the same kitchen where so many arguments had simmered. He didn't waste time. "I've filed for divorce," he said, "and I submitted the video as evidence for custody." His eyes dropped to the table. I was blinded, manipulated. I failed her as a father. The words came haltingly, but they came. "You didn't just save Thierry," he added. "You saved me from myself." He told me he wouldn't fight me anymore. He wanted full custody transferred to me. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing after being underwater. I nodded, my hands clasped tight, cautious hope rising like a slow tide. By noon we were gathered around the table, my parents, Martha, even Claude still lingering. A simple lunch, soup, bread, nothing ceremonial, just food. Everyone talked softly. Martha confessed her guilt over years of silence. My father added, "Sometimes love means protecting, even from your own blood." We didn't toast to revenge, we didn't even say Trina's name. We raised our glasses to peace, something we were only now beginning to understand. Sierra wandered in, hair still short, but covered by a bright scarf, and for the first time in days she smiled. The room seemed to exhale. Later, while the house settled into its new rhythm, I began writing a letter for Sierra to read on her 18th birthday. The words came without effort. I told her how proud I was, how she was born with a spine no one could bend. "Bravery isn't loud," I wrote. "It's the quiet decisions you make every day." I wanted her to know she wasn't a victim of this story. She was its heartbeat. I wiped my eyes but didn't feel broken. For the first time, the tears felt whole. In the backyard, we planted a rose bush together, just a small one, its roots bound in burlap. I dug the hole, she held the plant. "This is our garden now," I thought. "No weeds allowed." She pressed soil around the stem with her little hands. "Will this flower protect us?" she asked. I smiled. "It already is, just like you did, baby." She grinned and patted the earth. The spring air smelled clean, like the world had cracked open just enough for something new to grow. I went to the mailbox before dinner, still in my gardening gloves. Bills, flyers, and one manila envelope on top. No return address, just a single word scrawled across it. Truth. My fingers tightened around it. For a moment, all the air left my chest. I stepped back from the mailbox, the envelope warm from the sun, my heart pounding at what it might hold.